I think in many ways in India we often misunderstand or mistake or misrepresent expediency as innovation. So there's the J word, right, to God. To really become an innovation society, I think we have to in some way raise the bar.
Jugaad perhaps is a way of translating the English term hack. And hack in one sense is using something unintended. And India is a hacking haven. If you're trying to build competing products or you're trying to build interoperable products,
creativity and desire to problem solve are manifested in Jugaad solutions. There is a kind of coping mechanism that users and other specialists in an agrarian community need to resort to. The other idea around innovation that's abroad in the land has to do with price point optimization, or doing more with less for more, or frugal innovation. The problem with frugal innovation is that the end point is always fixed. What do we want? We want just a very, very cheap and accessible car. Or likewise, we know what a mobile phone is. We want a much cheaper and more widely distributable mobile phone. The innovation is entirely, in fact, on the back end around the systems, the distribution networks, not necessarily on the user experience. Will it solve the grand challenges of Indian society? I'm not so clear.
There seems to be a perception that there's a certain sort of cyclical gap that we in India can just look directly to the solutions that Western societies adopted 20 years ago to fix their problems, and just, whether it's through Jugaad or whether it's through minor tweaks, but basically just adopt those technologies wholesale and use them as solutions for problems that we face here today. And so I'm wondering how much the shadow of this particular perception continues to hang over people who start innovating or try to set about finding innovative solutions for our problems today.
We have this attitude of just enough is good enough. Is that going to make us an innovative society, or do we have to solve that attitude before even we think about doing great things in India?
I want to push back a little bit. When I hear the term framework, for me it is proto-theory. So the next step from framework is now your theory of innovation. That a little bit stinks of managerialism. That is assuming that regardless of the sector, there is a formula. And I'm not really sure that is true. I think there is a space and there is a time for managerialism, but it's not really a silver bullet to address the innovation question.
Many times innovation is mixed with invention. It has become multidisciplinary, it has become collaborative, it has become global. There are many enablers. When we talk about a society, there are many enablers for innovation. You talk about human capital is a big one. You talk about government is another big enabler. Technology, many people talk about as an enabler. Culture becomes a big enabler. Society and culture, you can bring them together, and so on. So, if you look at the society, all this have to come together.
There are two kinds of innovation we're talking about. One is there is scientific and technological innovation, and there's social innovation. The concept of change in society and the way in which people interact with each other, I think is a longer drawn out thing. But as far as technology is concerned, and I just want to ask whether, Steve Jobs had a particular idea of how you don't go and ask people what they want because they don't know what they want.
You really need to look at the diffusion of innovation, and you really need to get your hands dirty to do that. It's not about creating better frameworks. It is about getting your hands dirty. It's about being in the field, or at least talking to people who are there and working with societies and communities and creating communities that can generate innovation. I mean, I think it's fascinating. We have Aditya, immense respect for him. This is a guy who's created a vaccine pack, which is changing the way the ASHA workers deliver vaccines to kids who need them. He's working in rural Bihar on grassroots solutions.
So it's not as if innovation doesn't exist in India. It's existed for thousands of years. I want to draw your attention to the craft community in this country that's been battling Jugaad on one side and government policy on the other side. They may be the foundation of the creative society of the future. This is what we believe, and therefore we did our book on the craft community, and there are 6 million people. We are talking about very competent people, more competent than the chaps who have gone through school. Because the schools are creators of incompetence in my view. Can we network and build new way of reaching education which is local and relevant to the local? I think these are ideas that we need to explore.
Unless we fix education, perhaps information per se on the internet is not very useful. Most of our computer science graduates that come out of engineering schools, they've never read much code because they're really point-and-click engineers. So unless we fix that at a little more fundamental level, introduce students to fundamentals in college, don't reduce them to computer operators, make them computer scientists, any amount of information is not going to really change the fundamental nature of the sector in the country.
How do you ensure that largely innovation in practice is as well as the intention of innovation?
Our institutional networks would have to change, our educational systems would have to change, forms of behavior, our value systems, exclusion that we tolerate, all of these kinds of elements of our public sphere, our public life, the architecture of our society, which is comprised of public and private elements, all of that will have to change.